Now we can start. All right, so apparently we left off here yesterday. Troubleshooting. An oil pressure gauge is installed at the pump outlet. Where's the pump outlet? This one? This one? No? This is the interactive part.
No.
Here? Yes or no? This one? Yes or no?
Accessory?
It's on the accessory.
Oh, okay, where's the oil pressure outlet?
It's right where that hole is.
Here?
No.
Wait.
Hold it down.
No.
No. It's on the face.
On the face, in that square area, right, that first square.
It's right there.
Ah.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
Yeah, I got home.
That's where you take the oil pressure
Where
off.
your that?
That one.
See, he knew. I was wrong. I was just seeing who was going to say something.
No.
It's right there. That's where we take the oil pressure off. Okay, so that's the oil pressure outlet. So does that mean, so in normal operation, this is where the little elbow is going to be. And by the way, it is, they're special fittings. They have a very tiny little hole. And that's, some people say it's to reduce the pressure pulses, which I don't know where the hell that comes from. I think it has more to do with the fact that if an oil line breaks, you're not dumping mass quantities of oil out. It's going to be a smaller stream. For what good that does, I don't know, because it's, hopefully you'll land and then see there's a belly full of oil or something. You go, oh, we got a problem. But if you're on a long trip, pretty much their first indication is going to be loss of oil pressure. You're like, hey, oil. All right, so that's where we always take it. It's got a special fitting with a reduced orifice, a little orifice. So then, where would the pump outlet and the end of the last gallery, what do you think that is? This piece? Well, so the outlet is right there on the right side. So that must be able to take the left case all the way to the front for this particular engine. It's going to go to the right case and cross over to the left. So into the last gallery, if we do that, there will be about a 10 psi difference. Be about a 10 psi difference. So we're losing about 10 pounds of pressure throughout the engine. So if you do that and you look at it and the difference is too high, So in other words, we have an oil outlet of 60, and then the last gallery, we're only measuring, it'll be 60, 10 to be 50, 40? No, yeah, 40. What could it possibly be?
Oil leak.
Where? Internal or external?
Internal.
Good. So we got an internal leak. Where? So, okay, I'll put that internal leak. Internal leak. Where? Where would you suspect? This is it. This is the job, folks. Brought in my airplane. I got oil pressure problems.
Okay.
Let's start at the beginning. What's the first thing you're going to do?
Check the gauge. Make sure
Check my gauge. All right. How you going to do that?
Okay.
Turn on the engine. Look at it.
No.
Yeah, and I just told you it's too low.
Oh.
And you started up, charged me what, half hour for that? Yeah, I just want to call you up, let you know, Kevin, I've started up your airplane and, well, it looks like your oil pressure's a little low. Yeah, I know, that's why I dropped it off.
Did you see puddling at a certain point?
Puddling?
Yeah, like if a bearing or something was leaking or it was coming out.
How would it get outside the case?
Good.
Let's go back to the first thing you're going to do, though. What are you going to do first?
Install
Gauge.
your own gauge.
Would you go to your parts?
Do what?
Install your own gauge.
That's what I'm
Install your own gauge. You're going to tee it off somewhere. So you're going to break the line. You're going to put a little tee. You're going to put your own gauge. It's calibrated, big gauge. Run it. See if the two match. Okay? The two match. Now what's the next thing you're going to do?
Follow the lines. Yeah.
Follow the lines. Well,
Visually inspect.
Yeah,
all right.
Visual inspection.
It goes from here to the firewall to a fitting to a little line that curls to gauge. What were you expecting to see?
through the case.
Corrosion cracks.
Well, that's not the one that we really check the line for, right? Because that one is reading higher, so we're losing pressure somewhere internal.
Wait, so first thing we did is we teed in a gauge,
Mm-hmm.
and we verified if they're different, then it's, what's the problem? The ship's gauge, you just put a new one in. Okay, but they're both telling you the same thing and it's too low. What's the next thing we're gonna do?
Pressure relief valve?
Let me help you. We're going to put a pressure gauge at the pump outlet and then at the end of the gallery. Oh, that's what we're gonna. Geez, Kevin, you should have just said so. So now we're gonna install these gauge. Then we're gonna install two gauges. Got it? Okay. So thankfully, we've followed Michael's advice. We've already installed one nice gauge at the pump outlet. What do we have to do now?
Let's put one in there. Let's install another
At
one.
the other one. Okay, so we run it up. And we're going, wow, it should be no more, the difference should be no more than. Is this side okay up here? Because I didn't point it out over here. I pointed, maybe you didn't see it. All right, so 10 PSI. And we're getting 20 PSI difference. What is the problem? Oscar says it's an internal leak. Yay, Oscar. He's correct. If it's an internal leak, will we see it outside?
No.
No, something happening inside. Where are we going to look for internal leaks?
Will it be easier to figure out depending on which gauge is lower?
The pump outlet will always be higher.
Okay.
If by chance the pump outlet is low and the end is high, that means somebody installed another pump in the engine somewhere, and there's your problem. You got an unauthorized oil pressure boost pump running on in the engine. That would, okay.
Can we say the easiest thing to check is the pressure relief valve?
Ah, I love it. I'm going to start with the pressure relief valve. Okay. It's exactly what I do. Pressure relief valve. But, P-R-E-S-S-U-R, pressure relief valve. What about the pressure relief valve? What am I going to check?
Is it stuck?
Am I going to just turn it up a little bit and increase the pressure?
No.
No, because the problem is that we're losing too much. So, well, I would say this, that if the output is in fact too low, which is what the pilot is complaining of, I would start by adjusting the pressure relief valve or the pressure to bring it up to normal. Okay, so this whole 10 PSI difference doesn't count if it's supposed to be at 50 and it's at 5, or 10 and it's, let's say 20. It's 20 and 10. You're like, well, that doesn't count. It's supposed to be up at 50 or 60 or 70. Well, then put it there. Then look at the gauges. All right, so then we do that. We look at the gauges. Now we've got 70 output and we've got 60 on the end. What do we got? It's good. You just have low oil pressure across the board. So that's what's going to happen with orifices when everything's too low. All right, but we bump up the pressure. Now it's where it's supposed to be, but we're seeing this. And honestly, the complaint would be, my pressure seems okay when it's cold, but boy, when it gets warm, it just really falls off. And the warmer it gets, the worse it's getting. Something like that. And, I've tried heavier oil. It helped a little bit. That's kind of the symptoms you're going to hear. All right, so pressure relief valve. What are we going to check with that? Seating. Yeah, pressure relief valve seating. Okay, we take a look at that. It's completely fine. Now what? Where else can it be leaking? The valve guides don't have oil. The only ones that are pressure oiled is the TIO 540 ones.
The bearings?
Valve guides are not pressure oiled, are they?
No. So tappets.
Okay, could be. What about the tappets?
They could be sticking.
Clearance?
No, valve clearance is not going to cause an oil pressure problem.
They could be sticking open.
What could?
The ball bearing. Someone used the magnet.
That's probably not going to give me a oil pressure leak.
Could your filter be clogged?
You know what? You're right about that. If you had an obstruction, clogged filter, and it's pulling back all the pressure, depends on where the oil pressure output is, though. So if we think about it, it goes in. up through here, in through here, around the gears, out there, straight up here, through the screen, so the pressure is after the screen. So it would never be the screen. Not to get a difference. And it's not the guides, because guides aren't pressure oiled, so they could be this big around, and you're not going to get low oil pressure. What else?
Could it be the crankcase seal at all? Like on the upper section where it wouldn't be, well, not oil, but.
The crankcase seal?
Yeah.
Nose seal?
What?
The nose seal? That rubber seal?
I mean, the Loctite seal with the silk thread.
The silk thread.
Or-
That's not pressure oiled. No. There's
What
no.
about the crankcase?
No, let's talk about these
You
things.
put the wrong oil in.
No, okay, we got to stop and really pay attention to this. So we're talking about a pressure oiled system. So in other words, if I've got, let's go back to, stop saying things.
Well, the problem is pressure oils.
Stop saying things. Just stop for a minute. I gotta get my PowerPoint open here because I had to restart my computer. So
If they put the wrong, like viscosity of oil, then couldn't that give you a low pressure reading too though? If they put the wrong.
there's a differential though,
Okay.
right? And we're talking about internal leakage.
We're gonna hate ourselves when we figure out what
And-
it is.
Well, you got to think this through. Okay, everybody has a body, and you're probably most somewhat familiar with how your body works. You know what an aneurysm is?
Yeah.
What's an aneurysm?
Isn't it lots of blood or lots of blood flowing through your brain?
It's like a rupture, or like, well, you can get them in aortic aneurysms. It's like when your blood vessel starts to leak inside. Okay, so if I had an aneurysm right now, how much blood would I be leaving on the floor?
A lot.
It's internal.
Oh.
Okay,
You'd be
so
bleeding out of your ear.
so it's kind of like the stuff you're throwing at me right now is like, hey, maybe he's got an aneurysm. Well, I do have a cut on my finger. Yeah, that's probably it.
Let's
Okay.
fill that up.
Yeah.
Super.
Well, have you had a haircut recently? No. Okay, these don't, right? So you're throwing out some stuff that has nothing to do with the thing. It's like, and I don't mean to make fun. I'm so happy you guys are throwing out stuff like this. This is really good. All right, this is not a bad thing. But like let's think about the crankshaft seal, or the guides, or the seal here. We put the silk thread. Okay, how can that affect oil pressure?
No, it doesn't.
It's not in the oil pressure system. So even if we took a look at this whole system right here, and I said, well, okay, so here's the case, right? And there's the case, and there's a leak right here. Well, is it going to leak oil?
Oh, well,
No.
It's not connected to any of these systems, crankshaft over here with the seal. Is that going to do anything?
No.
No, it's a terrible drawing, sorry. But okay, so we have to think of it. It has to be something to do with the oil system.
Bypass
Bypass
valve.
valve.
Well, okay, we said that. Bypass valve, that was the first thing we wrote. So yeah, when it's supposed to be pressure oiling up here, it's leaking through here. Okay, so the bypass valve not seating is absolutely correct.
Like what about the galleries if one of them is damaged or blocked or something?
Okay, well if it's blocked, that would certainly do it because you're not going to get anything. So yes, a damage, like a crack in the case where one of these galleries cracked and it's spraying oil where it shouldn't be, that would be like an equivalent to a rupture right here and just spraying out everywhere. Would that have an effect?
Yeah.
Would I see it from outside the engine?
No.
Okay, that was good. That's good. Probably not going to happen unless there's been some sort of event. Not likely, yeah.
A leak in the oil pump case thing?
That's really good because that does happen and that can lead to low oil pressure for sure. It won't give you a differential because your output will be low. But it's absolutely a huge probability that you could have a leak around the oil pump itself in a couple of ways. One, they don't make them two-piece anymore, but the two-piece ones definitely could have developed a leak here or right here. It can, or a piece of safety wire could have went through here and put a big gouge. If you get space between these gear teeth and the case, oil won't be pushed this way. It just kind of cavitates in there. So you get safety wire goes through there. Yeah, it'll damage the thing and it'll create an internal pump leak. So, oh, absolutely. Pump big time. Okay, what else we got? Specifically, maybe related to this differential. It's like the number one thing. Do you want me to tell you?
No. Loose plug. Worn bearings.
Worn bearings. Okay, who said prop? That was good. Sort of.
You don't want to give me too much credit.
The problem with the constant speed prop is it goes through a governor, which boosts the oil pressure up. It's got its own oil pump.
External. Yeah.
Sort of. Like the Lycoming, it sits in the back, and then it runs it through a line towards the front, all the way up front. But the Continental, it just bolts on, and it comes from the inside of the case through the governor and right back into the case. There's no oil lines at all. So, okay, let me see what I got. Okay, what if difference is too low? It's like, well, there should be a 10, but now I got like nothing. It's the same.
Your orifice could have gotten like plugged to make it smaller. Something in like the gallery.
Sludge buildup.
Where? How?
The
What?
sludge tubes.
I could see that. I could see that, yeah. Because, I'll tell you what it is. You have a blockage somewhere. It should be going through a gallery and leaking out to the rest of the engine, but it's being blocked. It's like maybe it's not allowing it to go to a bearing or to some, but I think you'd see a lot of other problems. Like squealing and all kinds of bad noises and tappets that weren't filling up and tick, 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 tick. Oh, I love this one. This is I got from Lycoming School. So that was A, B. I was making a little noise there. One of my favorite weird tools is, I used to drive ambulance for many years while I put myself through A&P school, and then before that too. And so I had a stethoscope, and I just brought it with to work one day when I'm working on airplanes. And we were working on an airplane, and it was kind of making some noises. And I thought, let me get my stethoscope, see what I can do with this thing. I don't know, somewhere along the line I'd seen somebody use an automotive stethoscope. They have a metal probe on it. So I, I took the little thing off that, and it just had the hose. And that is like the best tool. It is, you have to do it. I'll try and remember to bring it in, or if you guys happen to go to CVS or something, just get a super cheap one. It's the weirdest thing. I can't even explain it. But somebody can be running an engine. They're super loud. You can hearing protection. Put this thing in, and I put my finger over the end where the little, I don't know what you call it, but the monitor part goes. And just the sound of the engine vibrating through the hose, I can hear all kinds of things. I can hear tappets going. I can hear gears. I can hear.
That's insane.
It is. And then so if you hear bad tappet noises, okay, which one is it? Then you just can go around and just stick the little hose right on the valve cover. You can listen to each cylinder going. It's just crazy, but it really works.
That's crazy.
So we'll have to try that.
I can imagine just.
Two things that are fun to do because you guys are gonna be running your engines. One is to run one at night and run it really and watch the flame come out. Lean it out, let the flame come out. The other one's to do that. But all right. But what if a pilot? There's the problem right there. Comes in and reports. Oil pressure has been fine for years. And I tell you, most pilots, man, they know their airplane. They really know it. You can usually trust what they're telling you. Not all of them. Fine for years. But suddenly is 10 psi too low. So I've owned my plane for 5 years now, 10 years now, been, running the same oil. I know this plane, it does this, and in this weather, it's always here. And right now, it should be just right about, 2 needle widths from the bottom of the green, and it's always right there. And I flew it yesterday, and now it's out of the green. Just right below it's 10 psi low. It's never been that way before.
Check the filter.
So, what are you gonna do? Huh? Okay. Yeah. Hey, gauge could have went bad. CT and another gauge, and both the two are telling the truth. Now what?
Another gauge.
Put another gauge on the end of it.
Now. Oh, on the end of the case?
Yeah, on the end of the gallery.
Okay. Then what?
Differential check.
You're getting maybe 10 psi difference.
Okay. It's low.
What are you gonna do?
Oil pressure.
Let's say it's like 15 difference.
Start looking for leaks, possibly.
Okay, you're not gonna see external leaks on an oil pressure problem.
Right.
I could take a drill, I could take a sledgehammer and beat the case, a big hole in it, drill holes in it, and am I going to have an oil pressure problem?
No.
No, it's not part of the system.
When was the last,
Okay, I got it. It's just like the building. Do we have water pipes running through it? Okay, if I break a window, am I gonna have a low water pressure?
No.
If I drill a hole in the wall, am I gonna have low water pressure? Okay, so it's the same thing.
Check the screen.
Okay, so Zach says check the screen. What am I doing that for?
See if there's any metal where something could have broken off in it.
So what's your thought? Why are you doing that?
Because this could be starting to clog the screen, clog it up and just restrict flow.
Okay, so Zach's point is actually what I'm looking for. And this was what the guy at Lycoming said, and I loved it. He said, answer, don't, so what else? What the answer a lot of people are going to say is, well, if your oil pressure is low, what do? You bump it up. Isn't that what the adjustment's there for?
Yeah.
Okay, so are we going to do that?
No.
Why not?
Good. Fix the problem.
Okay, something happened. And that's the point that they wanted to make was that, and he said it well, I said, don't just adjust, find out why. Engines will whisper before they scream, usually.
Yeah.
So if you have a sudden problem, and I'm going to ask you all kinds of troubleshooting, the answer is always going to come back to, well, why did it do that? Don't just hide the symptom, right? So I'm going to check the screen. We got a problem here. This shouldn't have done this. Yeah, your gauge is right. It's been that way all these years. Something happened. I want to take a look at this. I'm going to drain your oil, check the screen, cut it open. Let's take a look. And if everything looks fine, compression test, bore scope, oil looks great, then I'm going to pump it up and say, okay, let's be careful here and let's check the relief valve and everything. But make sure that you do your due diligence before you just bump up the oil pressure. Comes back in 2 weeks and says, well, now it's really low. So answer, don't just adjust. Don't just adjust. That was weird. Find out why. Engines will whisper rather loudly. Whisper before they scream. What number am I on?
Part number would be
17.
17, okay. All right, compensating oil pressure relief valve. So whenever we talk about the word compensating or compensated, it means that compensating for something. There's a problem, an abnormality that we want to correct for. So when we look at fuel systems, we can look for a compensating fuel pump, a fuel pump that compensates or figures out that the airplane is now way up in altitude and needs less fuel, does it on its own. Well, a compensating oil or pressure relief valve is a relief valve is going to realize the problem that we talked about the other day with this particular system. When we start this up and the oil is really thick and cold and heavy, where does it want to go? It's supposed to go to the engine, but if it's really thick and heavy, it can go to the bypass and start running through the bypass because it's easier. So we could say, I don't know, I'm just making up numbers, 90% is going this way and only 10% is going out to the engine. Is it going to, number one, it's not even going to heat the oil up at that point. So it's going to take a long time, but the engine will get really warm really quick because of all the friction. So there's your good news. So we have this problem. Now we can compound the problem if we take a radial engine that's running 120 weight oil. The oil's getting thicker and thicker, and if it's cold, it's going to want to go through the relief valve. So compensated relief valve is a relief valve that takes this into consideration. And this is large aircraft recip engines have a compensating oil pressure relief valve that allows the oil pressure for cold oil to be considerably higher than the oil pressure for warm oil. So in other words, we'll take this and it's going to have a temperature compensating device that says, no, wait a minute, oil's cold, so let's just run this up to 100 psi. And when it's all warmed up and going well, we'll let it go down to 70 or something along that line. So the higher pressure when it's cold, lower or normal pressure when it's warm. Let's see. Plunger of the oil pressure relief valve is held down by 2 springs when the oil is cold. However, when the oil warms up, a thermostatic bypass valve. We talked about thermostatic bypass valves. It's not this, but it'd be similar.
That's kind of interesting. So it bears some semblance to like a thermostat car.
Exactly.
Yeah, same thing.
I could have probably just said thermostat. Yeah. So let's see here. There's a lot that I wrote, so somehow I got to make this smaller. So. Yeah, essentially a thermostat. Next, used on large engines. Large engines like radial. Bypass uses 2 springs. Uses 2 springs. Maybe 2. Let me think. We'll back up. That'd be too abbreviated. Used on large allows a higher pressure for cold oil and lower pressure for warm oil. There, that makes more sense. Higher pressure forces cold, thick oil to bearings. Uses uses 2 springs. Uses 2 springs. Two springs when oil is cold, and as oil warms up, thermostatic valve, thermostatic valve removes pressure of second spring. There. How's that work?
Why just radials?
What's that?
Why just radials?
Because they're big and thicker oil. They're weird. They have a big oil tank and they have a lot of oil. I just don't see it on small engines. You just wait, you know?
Is it kind of
doing the same thing as that, the hopper?
The hopper,
Is there a
well,
different way to do the same thing essentially?
I don't want to say the same thing because you're actually forcing cold oil to go.
Oh, yeah, that's true. You're not telling it to hang out.
Yeah, it's like, no, we need 120 PSI here, even though you're cold. That's what we got to do. So then once it's warmed up, it's like, well, you don't need that much pressure. Let's back it off a little bit. All right, was that 17, 18? 18, oil filters. Oil filters. Three types. We have the strainer screen. And that's just that tubular screen that you've seen. So that's, I'll put that tubular screen. Tubular screen that catches larger debris. And some carbon. Light combing is from inside to outside. So any of the nastiness is going to be inside of the screen. Continental is outside, at least my experience, outside to inside. And I only see these little screens usually on small Continentals. If you got an engine, if you got an aircraft that's taking a big bore, you usually spend enough money to put a spin on. Tubular screen, they are cleaned and reused. And what else? Oh yeah. If clogged, soldered. I think I misspelled soldered. S-O-L-D-E-R-E-D, soldered. Yeah, the solder will burst. So I showed you that this one, it's soldered right there. Seam will burst, it'll break open, and then unfiltered nasty oil is going to get through and go to the engine. But that's okay because
Rather have dirty oil.
yeah,
What's the word up to B?
B Continental.
What?
What else do I have here? Oh yeah, oil change interval is how long?
25 hours.
25 hours. All right, catch up. All right, so the worst possible thing you could have is that one,
What?
the screen.
Oh.
Arguably, the very next worst one you could have, or even worse, is the Cuno. Cuno. This is a Cuno oil filter. It's a series of stacked discs with a little cleaner in it. So the oil is going to come through and go through these discs, catching all of the debris. And you can see, I mean, this is what it's going to look like on the outside. Oh, look, a little T-handle. And you take the T-handle and you rotate it. And it's got these right here, and it scrapes the stuff out. And then the scrapings are going to come down into here, and then you pull this open and get the scrapings will fall out of the bottom, hopefully. And you can see right here's a little ball in the spring. What do you suppose that is?
Relief.
Relief. So, okay, this is one of those things where you got to be able to figure it out on your own. Which is the inlet? This is, or this is the inlet?
The top one is the top
Top one is the inlet?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay,
It's
so
that one.
inlet, and then what happens if the screen, and so it's going to come down the middle then,
Uh-huh.
and then out, so the debris will go in the inside, out of here, around, and out here, and out, right?
Unless.
Why?
So
No,
because the
no,
relief
that's
has to be
right.
where the intake is.
Ah, listen to this
before the
guy.
valve.
He's sitting up front though. Look at the relief valve.
Yeah.
So if you come in this way and the screen gets plugged, it's gotta have somewhere to go.
Yeah.
Comes up the relief, and then should be a. Okay, then there's a hole right behind here, and it flows right across the top and out.
And that would be
So two things tell me that this is the inlet. Number
Relief.
one is the relief valve. Number two, it says out right there.
Ah, really?
So
Yeah.
Cuno, series of stacked discs. A series of stacked discs. Let's see, stacked discs that rotate. And are cleaned with a set of stationary wipers, scrapers. Okay. Let's see. Rotating the handle cleans it. Oops. Rotating handle cleans the filter.
These must just go
After long intervals, I don't know what long is, entire system, the entire filter, I shouldn't say system, entire filter is removed and cleaned.
So that little handle is something that can be done sort of without removing it? You can just do
Yeah,
it?
but I would do it on an oil change and pull that plug out of the bottom and drain it out.
Okay. But after longer intervals, you pull the whole damn thing out?
Yeah, like if it were my plane, I would probably say every 100 hours, well, do an oil change every, well, with that, I don't know if I'd go 100, maybe 25, I'd every fourth oil change or something like that.
I don't like it. I don't know why I don't like it. I just don't like looking at it.
I don't like it because you're not inspecting it well.
Well, that's kind of what I mean. It just
Yeah.
seems-
I'm not going to write this. The thickness of the spacer between the disc determines the separation of the disc. This separation determines the minimum particle size, or actually I say maximum, that can be filtered out of the oil. That's just kind of obvious. But, all right, then we have the full flow or spin-on. So there's a lot of adapters that were made, and smaller Continentals, it's really common. And what you do is you actually take out the filter. On Continentals, this filter actually has a cap on it. So when you unscrew it, this is actually part of the cap. And so you take it off, and then you heat it up and desolder this, throw it away, and you have just the cap. And you can put that on, and there's another spot where you can put a full flow oil filter on, and then you never take the cap off again. Or there's some where you just take this out, and then the adapter screws in. There are ADs on them you got to watch out for, but then you're allowed to use the spin-on, and then that is much, much better. So spin-on, so uses cellulosic paper. I can't even say that. CELLULOSIC paper. Or I could just say paper pleats, and now it would have been, everybody would have been happy, especially me.
So you would lost it? So you lost it?
It's just paper, uses paper. Okay, oil flows from outside to inside. Which means that when you open this up and look at it right away, it's all nasty. You pop this out and all the pleats are in here, you can spread them and look right away and see if it's going to be how bad it's going to be. If it's really bad, then just go get a hanky and start crying.
It's a beautiful day.
Yeah. Debris is trapped in the paper pleats. Usually, but doesn't always have to, usually incorporates a relief valve, or I should say bypass, really. Bypass valve in case filter is plugged. If the filter itself does not have a bypass, like this one didn't, that means that the aircraft does, or the engine does. There's something on the engine that then has the bypass. So that's why there's so many different, it's like a car, there's all different kinds. This one's actually quite small and very short. I think the one on my plane is about twice as tall. And it does, when you take it apart, there's all kinds of metal stuff in there and little springs and stuff, and you can see that there's a bypass in there. Let's see. Usually, but not always, oil change at 50 hours. There are a few engines out there that say, nope, you got to change it at 20. You got to have that and change at 25. And Larry's going to go through the whole examination process, show you how to cut them open. You guys are going to do that. And this is what's really sad. So you guys are going to have a lot of fun with Larry. Larry does a lot of annuals. So, I mean, he's really got a lot of good experience. I mean, he's out there doing like a lot of them like currently. So he sees a lot of good stuff. And so he brings them in, and I'm like, well, where are you getting all these filters to cut open, Larry? He goes, oh, it's simple. I just go to the airport, and because he lives on the airport, and he like goes to the trash can wherever, because at Executive there's these big oil tanks, right? And so where everybody can dump their oil, and then there's a barrel right there where everybody can throw these things away. And he goes, you just get in there, they're just uncut. They've been thrown away, uncut, with the end number written right on it, so everybody knows who
Crushed
does.
or anything?
Huh?
They're not crushed or nothing? Like, usually, you're supposed to, like, crush all your filters or
You-
they're small. As far as, like, automotive world, like, we come through and we take those and...
Think about crushing that thing when it's...
Well, you put it,
It's
there's
steel.
a machine, like when I was a diesel mechanic, we had a machine and it filters are this
Oh,
big.
yeah.
You pour them out, put it in the machine and...
No, you're supposed to cut those open and inspect them.
Oh, alright.
And so, but my point is, he's going to the trash, and people are just throwing them away without inspecting. Like, yeah, I don't...
Do you think he like looks up the N number on the FAA registry and like sends them a nice little email that says, hey, you should really like
I know.
check your airplane, dude. Like,
Yeah, I probably should, but...
How do you cut them open?
Well, Larry's going to show you, but...
Can opener.
Yeah.
Okay, it's just no. It's a tool.
Dremel.
No, you can't use a Dremel or anything, because then you'll get contaminants inside. So it's it's a cutter with a wheel on it, a little steel wheel, and you just keep going around and tightening it, and then it goes around and cuts it. Yeah, can opener.
So like an apple peeler.
Oh, okay.
A what?
Kind of like an apple peeler, how it goes around. but-
Not at all. It's got to stay in the same groove. It's like a pipe cutter.
Well, I was saying like going around.
Yeah,
just
more
like-
like a pipe cutter, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
All right, where am I at here? 18, we'll make this 19 then, 19. 19, let me see, filter / screen inspection. Well, that's great. You've cut open your filter, and what do you expect to find? Absolutely nothing?
No,
It's always something.
there's always something.
Little something, a little metal flake here, a little speck there, little black pieces of carbon. All right, so if you want to know what it's made out of, what do you do?
Inspect it. Like put it into the
Use a magnet. If it sticks to the magnet, it's
steel.
steel. If it doesn't, it's
Not.
not. Okay, so how much is too much? How much is too much? Some metal is normal. So some metal is normal in small amounts. I don't want to see any. Rule of thumb. Rule of thumb. If, and this is a good rule of thumb, if you take the filter and you wash it and you get all of the metal off, and so you've got an aggregate amount, being the total amount, and you pile it on your, if it covers your thumbnail, then that's too much. So yes, metal is enough to cover your thumbnail. That is enough to warrant immediate inspection. So if debris is enough to cover thumbnail, immediate inspection.
Is that solution that you're saying, soaking in some alcohol, or, right?
Stoddard solvent.
Yeah.
What does immediate inspection mean? What are you going to inspect?
Everything.
Yep. Disassembly. Less than thumbnail. Well, that's kind of, I don't know, less than thumbnail is cause for recheck. I should say slightly less, or some, because nothing is less than, right?
Yeah.
So, work with me on that one. Write something in there like
Slightly.
a little less than half a thumbnail is cause for recheck often. CAUS, cause for recheck
What is reach?
often. Okay, if I had a bad reading out of my filter, and it wasn't enough to cover my thumbnail, but it was, half, 3/4, I'm going to put a filter on. I'm going to go fly for maybe 5 hours
And check it again.
and recheck it again.
Nice.
That's an expensive check.
Yeah.
You know what else is expensive? Funeral costs these days. So,
Sure,
There was something that I saw on how much it costs to bury the baby in the hospital, and it's $20,000. Yeah, just
all right, so it's
crazy.
basically break time. So.